Chapter 12. The Genesis of a Relationship. As usual, work started early for John. Not as early as it used to start when Jeanette was still living. Early, nevertheless. Maria had agreed to start at 7 in the morning. This put him in at work around 15 minutes later. Later than before, but not horribly so. He screeched to a stop and hurried out of the truck. He was going to see if Lifestyles had called, and when his workouts with Jean-Paul started. He was excited. He opened the front door to his office space, threw his briefcase on the desk, and went to go get a coffee. As he sat in his desk, he looked around. It was certainly plain, but it had been functional. He had decorated it best he could considering how much money he had spent. He wondered if it wasn't time to upgrade. JT's was doing well. He let out a sigh. He wasn't only thinking about how much this office meant to him. He was also thinking about Jeanette and what he had done. He had killed her. He thought about his children and that they didn't have a mother any longer. It weighed heavily on his mind, but moving wouldn't have anything to do with that. Jeanette's passing didn't have anything to do with JT's success, he reasoned. Not being one to overanalyze his thoughts, he decided he'd go forward with the move. He picked up the phone. Lifestyles hadn't called. He looked at the time and decided it was too early for them to have called. He had to make sure the crews were all right. One job was scheduled to be finished this week, and the others were scheduled to be finished soon, by the end of the month. He had already landed 2 more, and he hadn't even looked at getting any new roofing jobs. He made the calls. Everything was on track. JT's was doing it again. He pumped his fist in the air. This left the finishing of payroll, landing another 2 or 3 inside jobs for John to get, and putting a plan in place to get at least 3 roofing jobs for John to do. This didn't at all faze him. He felt he could do it easily. He had done payroll before, and now it was just routine for him. New jobs were just happening, and the seasons were changing, so that roofing jobs would come too. JT Renovations had turned the corner. His biggest concern was now not growing too fast. It was no longer finding work. This made him happy. He was in his element. It was his firm after all. He was entitled in taking pride of what he had accomplished. To John, the overall economic climate didn't matter to him. All that mattered to him was that JT's was doing extremely well, and he felt he was responsible. He smiled. He had been working on payroll when he noticed it was after 8. It was time to try Lifestyles again. Hi, this is John Travers. Hi, John. How are you today? I'm fine, thank you. Jean-Paul didn't leave a note to say when he's available. Yes, he did. He can take you starting tomorrow at either 10 or later at 2. What would work for you? So that would be Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays? Yes, it would be. Okay, how about 2:30? You're on, and welcome on board. It'll do wonders for you. We'll start tomorrow then at 2:30? All right. See you then. Bye. Bye. And John replaced the receiver on the phone. Now he was really in his element. JT's had picked up, and he was going to get to know Jean-Paul better. He didn't know why this was important to him, but it was. He smiled. He looked down at his wristwatch and decided it was too early to call Daniela. He wanted to share his delight with her. He was back. All that was left was for the children to accept her. This was going to take some time in his mind, but it didn't matter because he had time. He worked on payroll for a couple of hours, and now he called Daniela. "Good morning, Daniela. It's John." "Hi, John. What do I owe this pleasure to?" "I was wondering if you had any plans for lunch." "Today?" she asked, trying not to sound overly surprised. "Yeah, today." "I'd love to." "Great. I'll pick you up just afternoon. Would that be all right?" "That'd be great." They didn't normally do this. This was the first time. She wondered what it meant. John had quickly gone home to get the Audi. He didn't even peek inside to say hello. Marie had noticed, but left it alone. Top up, he pulled into Daniela's parking lot. He got out of the car, but it wasn't necessary. Daniela was already coming out of the front door. She lived in a 4-story apartment building. The grounds were well kept. John went to the other side of the car and opened the door for her. "What do I owe this to? We've never been out to lunch during the week," she asked as she got in. "Nothing. I'm just in a celebratory mood. I thought we should share it." This has never happened before. I wonder what we're celebrating, she thought as John went to the other side. They drove to a sushi restaurant, one of his favorites. It was only 10 minutes away. After he parked his car on the street, he quickly got out to open her door. She got out. He rushed to the meter with his right hand, rummaging through the change in his pocket. He fed the meter, skipped in front of her to get to the door, and hurried to a free table to pull a chair out for her. "Please." She sat down. She wondered what had overcome him. She had never seen him like this. He opened doors, got chairs, etc. In short, he was being a real gentleman. He looked happier than she had ever seen him. To her, he seemed to be in high spirits. She had only seen him in a much gloomier mood. She was overjoyed with what she saw. After he had seated himself, she looked at him and smiled endearingly. John may have been in his element, but she was too. "Thank you very much. You're in a good mood." "I am. I had a really good morning. Would you like something to drink? Wine?" "I'll have a glass of white wine, please. And some sparkling water." A waiter approached them and asked if he could get them something from the bar. John ordered for Daniela and ordered a light beer for himself. The waiter put menus in front of them and went to go get their drinks. The restaurant was anything but fancy. It was functional and, importantly, clean. It wasn't like the restaurants that he and Jeanette usually had gone to. They were much fancier. They were decorated to give diners an experience. This one was designed so that restaurant goers could eat and run. It wasn't at all designed for customers to have an experience. It was designed for eating and didn't have any frills. The customers matched the decor. They were here to eat, not to have a romantic experience. It was a much more casual experience. The waiter returned and asked, "Have you had a chance to look at the menu?" "No, we haven't." "Could Could we have another minute? John asked. They looked at the menu. There was tempura, California rolls, sushi, and many more things, but they were all Japanese. John looked across the table at Daniela. She was beautiful. He wondered if he hadn't been taking advantage of her. He was much more sophisticated than her. He had many more experiences. His 10 years of running his own business and being proud of it had changed him. He and Jeanette had started out being a happy-go-lucky couple, but quickly learned that with success came community responsibility. It had grown on them, and they had quickly morphed into the role. They had gone from a happy-go-lucky couple to a well-respected member of the community, and they had very much enjoyed the role they had adopted. It was different with Daniela. She wasn't at all malleable that way. She was her own woman and happy in the skin she found herself in. She wasn't ready to grow up just yet and become a responsible member of the society. She had no interest in what was happening around her. It didn't bother her at all that she had grown up privileged. In fact, it was normal for her. Her education was expected and treated by her as her right. She was having way too much fun. Her relationship with John was just a part of this for her, but now she was feeling differently. His behavior was causing her to change. Until now, John had been a good catch. He was a handsome, established, and older boyfriend. Her girlfriends were jealous, whether or not they understood the complete implication of him having his own children, because unbeknown to them, with children came enormous responsibility. This side of him they ignored, as did Daniela until now. Now, she had been introduced to the children, and seen John through thick and thin, and was for the first time seeing him genuinely happy. She liked what she was going through. Although not at all consciously, she was transforming. There was more to him than she thought. She was falling in love. The waiter returned and took their orders. He was going to have sushi, rice, salad, and a couple of spring rolls. She ordered the California rolls and the salad. It's nice to see you so happy. Cheers, Daniela said, holding her spritzer up. She had added the sparkling water. Cheers. They both took a drink. Why are you so happy? What's happening at work? Work is going well. We've turned the corner. Not only that, though, for the first time in a long time, I apologize for that, I finally got my life in order. What do you mean? Well, he paused to collect his thoughts. He had to get it right. He didn't even understand what had brought his exuberance on. JT's is certainly going well. We finally turned the corner. This recession is over. People are again working on their homes. They're doing things besides what needs to be done, like the roofing jobs relied on for the past couple of years. I was doing payroll today, and it finally dawned on me. I don't need to worry anymore. I go to start working out. I'm looking forward to getting into shape. But the biggest news I have is that JT's is going to get a new office. We're going to move. Where? I don't know. I just decided. I'm going to start looking today. Well, congratulations. That is something to celebrate. How long have you been thinking about moving? Just today. Really? Yep, we're doing well. We've had that office forever. It's time for an upgrade. It has to reflect who we are. We're no longer a startup. We haven't been for a long time. But because of the 2-year slowdown, we've been behaving as if we are. I agree. If you want to be treated as a player, you have to look like a player. It was advice she took personally whether she knew it or not. She was a good-looking woman and dressed the part. Up until this stage in her life, she had always used her looks to get what she wanted. She had also used her privilege to her advantage. John was a perfect example. Her boyfriend suited her well. He was successful. He was good looking. He had money. He had his own company. The only thing that worked against him was that he had children from a previous wife. Unfortunately, his marriage had ended because she had died. In her mind, though, this was finally changing. She was becoming more responsible. She viewed the new him with much more regard than she had viewed him before. She had met his children, and she was having lunch with him during the middle of the week. He hadn't given her the time of day while he had worked up until now. Not only that, he had involved her in his business. He had told her that he wanted to move JT's. She now understood that she meant more to him than she had ever thought. This pleased her. She had progressed from being just arm candy to something more. Marriage material? She wondered. Would you like me to look with you? I would. A woman's opinion is something I've always appreciated. It wasn't clear to him that what he had just said was contradictory to the way he had always behaved. John was used to making these in any decision of consequence, whether it involved his family or his business, by himself. He had never consulted Jeanette. She had always just accepted what he had unilaterally decided. That wasn't to say she hadn't been supportive, because she had, but she had never voiced any concern. She may not have had any. The same area of town isn't necessary, but it's an area where the age of the houses work in our favor. There's more money in New Sudbury, though. It was a quandary. John hadn't given it a lot of thought. This was the first time it had crossed his mind. That's difficult. Should you go where the money is, or should you go where the work is? Both have their advantages. How long do you think you'll keep this office for? I don't know. But I better count on forever. I don't think you can. What if you keep expanding and you need more office space? She had a good point. He fully expected to keep growing. The houses in New Sudbury would be older. More and more new housing developments were going into different parts of the city. He decided on 10 years, no more. 10 years. I would stay in the area you're at. If you're only looking at the next 10 years, then a lot isn't going to change between then and now. You can make another decision when the time comes. She was right. JT's was going to expand. Her point of view was correct. If he focused on the next 10 years only, it was best to stay where he was at. New Sudbury could be handled from there. In the case of an emergency like JT's had just been through, he could always use New Sudbury as a backstop. John made his mind up. JT's is staying put. Thanks for your input. You're welcome. Do you still want me to help? I'd like that. When do you want to start? Consistent with his character, he said, Today, if you're not too busy. She thought for a moment and answered, Today would be fine. Have you had a chance to see what's available? No, I haven't. We can drive around and see what's available. Get a sense, anyway. Let's do that. As soon as we're finished here, let's go look. Okay. Daniela was excited. This was the first time she felt part of his life. She was going to help him find new office space. She had just been introduced to his children. To her, it all meant their relationship was moving forward. She was happy. Was she growing up? Was she becoming a full-fledged woman? Did she want to become an instantaneous mother? She didn't know. All she knew was that she was happy. John had already checked on his cruise. Payroll was finished and had been submitted. He'd spent some time thinking about the places he and Daniela had seen. Not one of them that struck him as being a must-have place. More and more, it looked like he would have to base his decision on functionality. Unlike when he had first opened JT Renovations, the excitement of looking for an office for his new company wasn't here. This disappointed him. He had hoped it would be the same, but it wasn't. It was anticlimactic. He had the luxury today of going by some of JT's job sites. It wasn't every day he found the time to do this, but today he had. The work was going well. He didn't have a problem with how the workers were doing their jobs. When they were finished, they would be up to his standards. The customers would be happy, and this had become extremely important to him. He wanted JT's reputation to soar. He wasn't willing to accept subpar work. He didn't feel the firm could afford it. Its reputation would be ruined. John's biggest fear was that JT's would become just another renovation company. He didn't want that. He wanted the firm to be known for the quality and timely work they did. He looked at the clock that hung on the wall. It was just after 2. It was time for him to go to his first workout. He was looking forward to it. It wasn't only the workout he was looking forward to. He was also looking forward to confronting the man who had ruined his marriage. He was going to meet Jean Paul, only for the second time. But this time, he was going to have a chance to actually meet him, to get to know him, and find out what made him tick. No sooner than Jeanette had passed. Her indiscretion and all that surrounded it, including Jean Paul, had all been but almost forgotten. John had more pressing issues occupying his mind, like whether or not she deserved to die for what she had done. His immediate answer to this question was, of course, that she didn't. But every time, he shortly afterward came to think that she did because of what she had done to him. He straightened the papers and files on his desk and headed out. He wasn't planning on returning to the office after working out. He was going to go home and see how the kids were doing. His desire to make sure they were all right hadn't changed, even if everything else in his life had. Good afternoon. John said as he came through the front door to Lifestyles. Good afternoon. John walked by the reception desk, nodding as he passed. He went to the change room to get ready for his workout. Now that he was finished, he came out. There were the same two men standing, chatting, on the other side of the gym. John Paul recognized him and walked over. Good afternoon, John Paul. I think I've designed a routine that will push you at the start, but not so much that you'll be feeling it tomorrow. We can make it harder as we go. For now, I think what I've planned will do. Are you ready? As ready as ever, John answered him, following him to the mat. Once there, Jean-Paul showed him some exercises designed to stretch his arms, legs, back, and neck. He did them. He was starting to feel more loosened up. He hadn't felt this way in years, and he liked it. Are you ready to try some weights? I think so. We'll start with some bench presses. Can you lie here? Jean-Paul asked, with his right hand on the bench press weight machine. John got on, put the weight at 80 kilograms, and began his repetitions. Have you been here long, Jean-Paul? A couple of years. How's the weight? Fine, I think. I can probably do more, John said without any strain evident in his voice. Do you like it here? I do. I'm doing something I enjoy. It allows me to stay in shape. I can't complain. I bet you can't, John thought, not knowing where the anger was coming from. Calm down, calm down. John had no idea where the anger had come from. He hadn't felt this way since he had first found out. He wondered if he had been suppressing his anger this long. I couldn't have been. No way. Not for this long, or I would have known. John wasn't a psychiatrist, so had no way of knowing for sure. But surely I would have known, he thought. Clearing his head, John asked, how many customers do you have? I have 25, and I do a group session in the evenings. When do you have the evening sessions? Every Tuesday. Are you interested? It's free. You have to be enrolled with me. This is enough for me right now. Let me see how this goes. I understand. Getting into a new routine can take some time. We'll revisit it in the future. But if you ever get the inclination to come, let me know. I will. Let's move over here and try some squats. Again, I'm starting you a little light, but we'll increase it as you go. John and Jean-Paul went through all the weight machines in 40 minutes. Did 15 minutes on a treadmill for a cardiovascular workout, and then finished with more stretching. John felt good as he went to the change room. He wanted a shower. The workout hadn't caused him to break out profusely into a sweat, but it had caused him to sweat. Walking through the change room, John reflected on his first encounter with Jean-Paul. It was the first time they had really met. John wasn't sure what he felt. Jean-Paul had been nice enough. He had been polite. He had made small talk. All in all, their conversation had been pleasant enough. John wondered what had overcome him. His conversation had caused what he could only describe as anger well up inside of him. I haven't felt like that for months. Maybe I'm not over it. Maybe I never was. John drove home in his truck. The children were there. He was looking forward to seeing them. Maria would be there. He went into the driveway and came to a stop in front of the garage. He quickly turned the truck off and got out. He skipped to the front door, opening it, shouting, "Hi, kids. I'm home. Maria, are you here?" "Daddy, Daddy," came from downstairs. It was Tammy. From the kitchen, Maria answered, "Yes, I am. I'm in the kitchen." "What are you doing in there?" John asked, walking over. Just then, Tammy wrapped her arms around his leg. Johnny had decided to stay downstairs and watch the program. "I'm making a little supper. Thought you might like to join the kids today." "Thank you, I would. I worked out today. Hi, Tammy," he said, giving her a little attention. He rubbed her head. "Did you have a nice day at school?" "Yup." "Why don't you go downstairs with your brother and watch the television?" "Okay," she answered and scurried away. "Did you have a good workout?" "I did. I enjoyed it." "Jeanette enjoyed it," Maria said, well aware of who was being brought up. She felt it was time that John accepted her death. The kids had. Although Maria's heart was in the right place, she didn't know the whole story. John had killed his wife because she had an affair with the very same person he now had as a trainer. It was surreal. What was he doing? Throwing the whole situation in his face? John wasn't sure of what he was doing himself. He had gotten mad. He obviously wasn't immune to what had happened to him. He wanted to understand more. He had a need to understand why it had happened. What was Jeanette getting from Jean Paul that she wasn't getting from him? It was this overriding question he wanted answered. He hadn't been able to come up with an answer yet. He wondered what he lacked. He had always provided well for the family. He had always provided well for her. He had loved her with his whole heart. As much as he tried, he had no answer for this fundamental question. He didn't understand her motives. He had given her everything she had asked for. What he hadn't given her was respect for her as a person, not just a mother. But that was consistent with who he was, so he couldn't be blamed. It's probably best that we don't talk about Jeanette at this stage. I'm not ready. But you'll never be. That doesn't mean it didn't happen. It did. She won't be back. I appreciate what you're trying to do, Maria. I'm just not ready yet. Keep bringing Jeanette up. Who knows, maybe one day I'll be completely over it. It's just not right now. I'm not. I hope you understand. I do. We'll do it bit by bit. I'd appreciate that. We'll do it bit by bit. But I've had enough bits for one day. Let's change the subject then. I'm making a roast beef for dinner. There are potatoes and broccoli to go along with it. When will it be ready? Are you going to join us for supper? No, I have to get home. I have some things to do tonight. Okay, maybe tomorrow then. We'll see. John went to the kitchen to make himself a drink. He was going to have a rum and coke and think. He had started his workouts. He still didn't understand what had gotten into Jeanette. He was convinced he was a good husband. The best that could be found, in fact. He was looking for new office space He had celebrated with Daniela. He had introduced her to the children. JT's had turned the corner and the firm was again profitable. On the surface, everything had returned to normal for him. In fact, better than normal. But he had poisoned his wife. Can things be normal for me again? He wondered. That was indeed the question he needed to answer. Whether he could find an answer remained to be seen. The couch and the drink comforted him. Maria worked away in the kitchen preparing dinner. For the life of John, he couldn't figure out how Jeanette could have been so unhappy in their marriage to find comfort in having an affair. With her workout coach on top of that. He had met him. He wasn't a bad-looking guy, but that didn't explain it. Something had to be missing. But like every time he had tried to figure out where he had gone wrong, he couldn't. In his mind, he had done everything right. She must have gone nuts, he concluded. Little of what was truly bothering Jeanette even came close to entering his mind. That was his problem. If only he could see it, but he couldn't.